Welcome to the Kuza Cast, where we interview some of the most influential people in tourism from around the world. My name is Graham Watson, and I'm the founder of Kuza Global. The word Kuza means a new dawn, and in 2023, we want to find out just how our guests are working towards that new dawn. Join us and subscribe to future episodes as we hope to inspire you with stories of strength and resilience in the tourism industry. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Kuza Cast. Today, my guest is Mandisa Magwaxaza, and hope I pronounced that right, Mandisa. And we are talking about the tourism industry, as you well know, and how we are recovering from the COVID pandemic. So welcome, Mandisa.
Thank you so much, Graham. Good to see you again, and thanks for having me.
No problem at all. We've got to know each other well over the being on the SATSA board together, and then during lockdown we were on the wonderful app Clubhouse together. We got to know each other even more there.
Yes, yes, you witnessed the beginning of my broadcasting career.
Yeah, those were the days. I mean, I've gotten back onto Clubhouse now, and I still think it's a great platform for networking and. Yeah, so it's definitely something to look at continuing if you have the time. I know everybody's swamped at the moment. So welcome to Kuza Cast. Thanks so much for agreeing to be a guest. I've been admiring your journey for many years since we first met. I think it was at Joburg Airport on the way to a SATSA board meeting. And yeah, I mean, if you could just let the listeners know a little bit about who you are, your history so far, and how you got into the tourism industry, and what you're up to nowadays.
Sure. How long do we have?
As long as you need.
So sure. How I got into tourism, I'm actually going to start there because it's actually very attached to where I'm from. So it's all in one story. So I was born on a little farm or in a farming community halfway between what is now Gqeberha and used to be Port Elizabeth, and Makhanda, which used to be Grahamstown. So there's a farming community there, and if you've ever gone on a game reserve in the Eastern Cape, it's pretty much in this area, or you drive past this area. The farm that I was born on is actually flanked by the Lalibela Game Reserve on one side and the Pumba Game Reserve on the other. So I'm sure you might have a mental picture of the way that is.
Absolutely.
So I was born there in Seven Fountains, and to a farming, a family of farm laborers. And my mom became a domestic worker in Port Elizabeth. So when I was about 3 or 4, the people that she worked for invited me to come and live with them because my mom was, as you know, Graham, in those times in South Africa and still today, was a sleep-in domestic worker. So she came home once a month, and every month when they came to pick her up, they probably witnessed this child wailing and bawling her eyes out. And I think it probably got to them in the end. So they invited me to live with them. And that's purely the reason why I was able to get, a better education. I went to school here in Gqeberha, went to Sunridge Primary, St. James Roman Catholic High School, and then eventually I went to go study at Rhodes University. And while I was in high school, I'd always, after school, would waitress at the local restaurants and things like that. And so when I went back to Grahamstown, which is where Rhodes University is, to study, I then worked vacations and weekends at the game reserves, and yeah, because I used to go home for holidays, and instead of coming to PE, I used to go to my gran on the farm, and it was like literally in walking distance to get to Lalibela or Pumba. And so I ended up doing most of my vacation work at the Pumba Private Game Reserve, and that's how I got into this industry. I mean, being a girl from the Eastern Cape, at that point, I had never been out of the Eastern Cape, Graham. I think the first time I actually took my own leisure vacation out of the Eastern Cape, I got on a train in Grahamstown to the Northern Cape, and that was it. Living my best life on my way to Colesberg, of all places.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So working at Pumba, like goodness, I got to meet guests from all over the world, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
and really just being around people that had so much experience in the industry and hearing their stories, I really fell in love with it. And I was studying anthropology. What that was one of my majors, and I did a paper in my third year about the displacement of communities, due to ecotourism, because that was the reality that my family had lived, right? We were eventually moved from the farm, um, because of the explosion of game reserves in the area, and just also other reasons that actually then were spin-offs from the new economic transition when it came to agriculture versus um ecotourism and conservation within the farming communities of the Eastern Cape. But that's a story for another day. So anyway, so while I was doing this paper, I ended up at on the Lalibela Reserve working at a little lodge called Kichaka. Don't know if you
Oh, okay.
remember that,
Yes, I do.
but it's there now. It's actually officially part of Lalibela now. Yeah, so it was owned by a British gentleman by the name of Tim Fenner at the time, and his wife Daphne was actually in my anthropology class, and so I got to know of the reserve. I went there and just working, and the beauty of being from the community and then working at the lodge was that I got to see a different side of the people that I grew up around, my elders who were working on the reserve in various roles, from housekeeping to the kitchens. My uncle was the maintenance supervisor at Kichaka, literally my mom's brother. And I got to experience like this whole full circle, I think is the right term. Witness the full circle of having witnessed them as farm laborers, and now these people that had gained new skills and were hospitality professionals, right, in the industry. And so I fell in love with it. The lady who was doing marketing at the time for Kichaka was a lady by the name of Gabby Kromeyer, and she lived in Cape Town. So she was based in Cape Town, and she needed someone on the reserve who could, just assist with hosting agents that came through. And through that, I got to meet a lot of agents who were based in Cape Town and Durban and Johannesburg. And I came to quickly understand that the heart of the industry is in Cape Town. And I was like, well, I'm hooked on this industry now, so I better get my tush to Cape Town.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to work a very cool cycle where you'd work for 3 weeks. But luckily for me, unlike others, I actually got weekends off, and then you'd get the fourth week, you'd get the whole week off. So in November, which is my birthday month of 2009, I planned that I would spend my week off in Cape Town so that I could see what opportunities I could get. So I sent emails to all of the hotels that I'd been trolling online. The Cape Grace, the Mountain Nelson, the 12 Apostles. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm coming to Cape Town. Love to come and drop off my CV. So if I can meet someone to do that, that would be great. And I think I sent about 14 emails. 6 or 7 hotels got back to me. So by the time I went, I had about 7 appointments.
Gosh.
Yeah, 12 Apostles, Mount Nelson, Cape Grace, the Mandela Roads place, quite a few places. And my first appointment I remember was at the Cape Grace. So anyway, so I took an Intercape bus to Cape Town, and my neighbor from Rhodes, who was my neighbor in Res, was living in Rondebosch. So I crashed on her couch until I posted on Facebook that I'm in Cape Town, and previous guests from Kichaka saw the Daltons, and they're like, come and stay with us in Constantia. I was like, oh yes, thank you, which was really amazing because they were an amazing family that had a daughter my age, and we connected when I was hosting them at Kichaka, and there's like, we'd love to see you. And they actually showed me, and they took me to Kalk Bay and all these touristy things, which I might have or might have done, but yeah, that was really amazing. So I had all my appointments. My first one was at the Cape Grace. I remember my appointment was with Jean Nage and Lenise Luba. I don't know if you know them. And
No.
yeah, so Nigel Pace was the GM at the time. So I had my interview with them, and they called me back the Monday. I was due to get on a bus that evening, and I lugged all my luggage to the Cape Grace to have my second interview. I was like, oh my gosh. But I mean, I couldn't do anything else. I didn't have a car. So I lugged my luggage to the Cape Grace. I could have a second interview before I left back to the Eastern Cape. And that was with the GM, which was Nigel Pace. And yeah, I got the job. I got an email when I got to the office the next week, and that's how I got my job, my first job in Cape Town. And I moved, and I never looked back. I worked at Cape Grace, and then I worked at the Steenberg in yeah, on the other side of Constance. And then at the time when I was at the Steenberg, quite a stalwart in the industry, Sumari Foster, she was my manager. And unfortunately, she passed away while I was there. So the dynamic of the job changed a lot because I assisted her with just admin and res and things like that. And like there were a lot of changes happening, and the environment just became a lot for me. So I decided to leave. I got an opportunity at booking.com, which was incredible. Working at booking.com was the first time I traveled internationally. They still, I don't know if they still do them now, but back then they did their amazing booking.com annual meetings in Amsterdam, and we would go as the content team to various places around the world, and that was pretty cool. So I stayed at booking.com for a while, and that's when I think my career really turned from operations and a little bit of sales to full on digital, and understanding what it took to place a property in the digital space. And fortunately for me, I have the gift of language. So then crafting that gift together with my experience in hospitality to be able to really promote a product online, and then further being trained to have an eye for what is visually appealing, and not only visually appealing, but the science behind digital marketing. And so I was at booking.com until personal circumstances just kind of led me to want to leave Cape Town. And I decided, okay, I want to leave Cape Town, but I don't want to leave the Western Cape. So how about we go live in Franschhoek? It's always been such a beautiful place. So I moved to Franschhoek, and in Franschhoek, I worked for Suzanne Bailey Kaup at Classic Portfolio. And that was really a pivotal point in my career. I learned so much. The group of ladies at that time, Suzanne didn't hire any guys, and we were a group of women in the office, and I worked within the content department, still writing, creating fact sheets, rate sheets, putting properties, onboarding them onto the website, all that stuff. So it was a mix of what I'd gained from booking.com, and also, of course, with my knowledge of the safari landscape and all of that. So yeah, learned a lot, but then it was finally time for me to really come home. I was yearning to come back to the Eastern Cape. And after all those years in Cape Town, I thought I could come back and really make a difference, right? Because I'm sure my skills were needed or could be put to good use. And I did what I did when I was trying to get to the Western Cape. I called around and I said, this is who I am. I really want to move back to the Eastern Cape. Is there an opportunity for me? Mantis Collection answered my call, and they met with me, and then they hired me. When they hired me, they didn't really have a job for me. They're like, well, we kind of going through a big transition. We don't really have a marketing team at the moment, but we're probably going to start setting it up. So come in and see what you can do. And I think in any career, going into a place that is being formed, or a space that is being formed, is a great opportunity to apply yourself and actually put systems in place that that you can work with, and that's exactly what I did at Mantis. I went in and helped create the systems for marketing and digital content management and all of that. And and started growing my network within the city to create packages alongside Nelson Mandela Bay tourism. So I think Mantis Collection was probably the first hotel group to actually package the Nelson Mandela Bay Pass, and we did that. And that I was at Mantis up until COVID knocked and banged down all of our doors of safety.
The dreaded COVID. Yeah.
The dreaded COVID, Graham. So when I met you, you were actually the first board member I met at SATSA with Professor Johan, may his soul rest in peace. And I was still at Mantis at that time. So COVID happened, and in the 18 months before COVID, I'd started this development program with Mantis, having identified that, I'd love to be independent. I'd love to work with them as a consultant. And, they were open to the idea. My direct boss at the time, Ignis Leroux, was very supportive of the idea, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. So I was in different trainings and things to get to a point where I could open my own business. So when COVID hit, I'd already registered Molo Mhambi Relations. I just wasn't working in it full time, of course. And I guess COVID came and just expedited all of that. And so I went in. At first, I didn't even use the company's name. I was just working as myself, using my name. And I must say, being at SATSA, because at the time I was the Eastern Cape chapter chair, still am, and being at SATSA and being involved in everything that was happening in terms of, getting the message about the protocols out there, forming protocols, and just really being on the other side of the phone when any member was going through anything. And sometimes it was just, I don't know, let me find out. And just having that SATSA network to call various people and find information out and be able to give valuable advice was really incredible. And all the work that SATSA did, from the protocols to right up until fighting to get us off the red list, was, goodness, it was an education. I think we all got a deep education in crisis management during that time. Sure. And so it also, I think that journey also prepared me to be a fully fledged business owner within the tourism space. And because in 2021, I finally launched Molo Mhambi Relations as Molo Mhambi Relations. And it was after I attended the Mpumalanga Tourism Expo, which inspired me greatly. And I was like, you know what? The industry is hopeful. And if the industry is hopeful, if the individuals that have been through such a tough time and have held on to their businesses are hopeful enough to get together and put a tourism expo on in Mpumalanga and make it a success, then there's sign of life. And let me just commit, because at that time I was doing work. Sorry, I'm going back and forth, but at that time I was doing work for other industries, right? I was writing for lawyers' firms and engineering companies and all of that. And I was thinking maybe I should just step away from the industry and just work as a generalist in communications, for that can just work in any industry. And that's a hard decision after 15 years of being in this industry and leaving it.
Yeah, there's a like a magnet that draws you back. It's I think it's a great industry. The people and what we do for a living. I think it's when you are responsible for creating, I know it's cheesy and cliche, but when we do create people's future memories, and when we look back, and we personally, like each and every individual, every consultant sitting there, I think we underestimate what we do for a living. The fact that we've put in a certain lodge that, that's that little girl or little boy who is going to remember that for the rest of their life and draw back, during the sad times and look back to those happy times, that and you've had a part in creating those happy times. So I really do think we underestimate what we do for a living, and that's why it keeps drawing us back, because of the power that and the joy that we feel and create, I think.
I agree with you completely, especially having started in ops and hosting and waitressing and all of that, and even in reservations where you literally are part of that process and building up that excitement for someone. It really is that. It really is about creating future memories. You've hit it on the spot. And I was thinking of Marie Kondo because I'm such a fan. And I thought you were going to say we actually spark joy, because that's the corny line that was in my head. I was like, we truly create people's joy, and we're part of a joyful side of people's lives, which is quite cool, I think.
Yeah.
So being at that tourism expo in Mpumalanga was my moment when the penny dropped for me. I was like, you know what? There's a reason I love this. I love tourism. Let me really just put down my roots. I relaunched the business. Well, launched the business in as Molo Mhambi Relations. Molo Mhambi, by the way, Graham, means hello traveler in isiXhosa.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say we need to just clarify what that means for the international guests. So yeah, we've both got very nice brand names. Molo Mhambi, hello traveler.
Hello traveler.
And then Kuza, yeah, as you know, you helped me make sure that it was the correct word. I remember asking you,
Yes.
and you said absolutely means a new beginning, a new dawn in the morning. So, well, yeah, that's what a fantastic company name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, it's Molo Mhambi Relations, and Molo Mhambi is actually a name or a phrase that precedes the business. I think the first time I took a business venture to Adrian Gardner, who's the owner of Mantis, I took
Yes.
a little binder to him, and the name was Molo Mhambi Relations. And at that time, I was thinking about ways of bridging the payment gaps and the payment method gaps for the local market in travel. Just having always worked in luxury hospitality and for luxury hospitality, but being back home and realizing that out of my family, out of my community, I'm one in a million. To be a person that has experienced the things that I have. And then I was looking at the payment methods and just financial management and ways that aren't just indigenous to our communities, and thinking that surely tourism can adapt to these already existing methods of managing money and payments and things, and adapt to that in order to increase the probability of locals actually traveling in various markets within South Africa. And so this is something that was called Molo Mhambi, and that just came from being able to greet someone as the industry greet a traveler in that term, and that being that person's language, right? Which is Xhosa, people that look like me, Xhosa, Zulu, whoever, they South African will know what Molo is. And so it just symbolizes inclusion and including people that have, for social, economic, and historical reasons, kind of been left out of tourism. And so when I was registering basically a PR and marketing company, which is what Molo Mhambi Relations is, I went back to the name, because for me it was still about inclusion, because I felt if I'm going to bring my services to the table, and having always worked in the luxury market, then how about I serve other segments of the industry and help them get to the similar standards, and similar communication standards, similar marketing standards, so that they could compete neck and neck with anybody else. And that was the original vision going in and starting Molo Mhambi Relations. But as you know, Graham, when you're in business, it kind of takes a life of its own, hey? Both by necessity and nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah. No. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you realize what an inspiring story you have, and hopefully you, yeah, I mean, I know you as a very humble person, but I think you need to really harness all that past all that experience that you've gathered in your own business, and then as well as helping others. So yeah, I mean, I do think, I mean, that the twists and turns, so many serendipitous moments in your career that kind of put you on the right path. I mean, it's very much still a growing tree, and I think you've been up. You've got many branches, and I think your tree is got a lot more to go from what it looks like. So congratulations of everything that you've done so far.
Oh, thank you, Graham. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you. And
No problem.
for me, when I think about my journey in tourism, I always it's very much purpose driven. And the reason I started with the story of where I'm from is because I think ultimately that's where my story will end up, back in Seven Fountains, and prayerfully and hopefully, being able to go back into my community and ensure that tourism does truly benefit communities like mine, and starting there, because my cousins and other members of my family still live there in conditions that are not so great, and are as a result of tourism, unfortunately, which is the other flip side to ecotourism and conservation that we never hear. But it's not the be all and the end all, because I believe that tourism is also the key to changing that as well, and to completely improve the lives of people beyond jobs. Because I think people will benefit, rural communities and township communities will truly benefit from tourism when there's ownership and equity. And I think in leveraging, all the things we enjoy about our culture, we can certainly achieve that. So when I think about my future in tourism and in life, and where this tree that you speak of will probably end up going, I think it's really full circle right back to just finding solutions for that area of South Africa.
You spoke a bit about the digital marketing strategies. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a full-on tech nerd. I love all the digitization of everything. I think that it's I mean, I think the days of walking around with printed brochures are long gone. Everybody wants a link on an email, and not only is it better for the environment, but it's just a far more. I mean, I just think that the productivity tools and everything that you can get from technology and digital strategies are fantastic, and the reach that you can get. So I mean, can you speak to like the role of digital content in the tourism industry, and how you see it evolving, particularly in your company, like successful media relations and content production strategies that involve purely digital? And I think there's going to be a lot of challenges with onboarding a lot of the segment of the industry that you're trying to work with, the startups that maybe don't have the tech savvy or even the equipment to implement that digital strategy for their business. So I mean, how do you see the evolution of that for the tourism industry, digitization?
Well, I think COVID definitely fast tracked us, right? In that, well, the whole lockdown, and not just the lockdown, but the protocols, and making sure that things were less, there were less touch points, and and that necessitated people and the industry, particularly when it comes to marketing, finding and sticking to digital solutions, because they'd always been there, but no one was really using things. And one thing for me, which is quite simple, but I realize, and have realized over the last couple of years, to play a really important role in business, is the role of WhatsApp, which is which
Yep.
which I try and encourage my clients to use internally and externally. It is a very nice way to be able to communicate with clients within a homogenous ecosystem. They're on WhatsApp all the time, but the beautiful thing about WhatsApp is that people go onto WhatsApp and WhatsApp statuses by choice. So they're not consistently bombarded, but should they go onto their statuses and have a look, it's there. And if they go onto your contact and you've properly filled out all of the tools, They can go and see your fact sheet, your brochure, your rate sheet, everything by choice, quickly accessible on their phone in a medium that they're using all the time. And so that's, I think, one of the low-hanging fruits for every kind of hospitality business, whether they have the budget, the savvy or not. I think WhatsApp has proven to be highly accessible, and because people just use it in everyday life. And when it comes to digitization, I think the more natural something is and falls into people's everyday life, including the language that you create on your digital content platforms. Because I mean, I come from a time when when you market a luxury product, you use the highest English you can. Even as reservations consultants, we were employed for how we spoke and how we presented ourselves. But I think people like human connection, man, and people like to be real. So, and from a language perspective, as someone that deals a lot with writing and speaking, just speaking in everyday English and using everyday concepts is something for now and the future. And
I think that. Sorry, I mean, I think that there doesn't need to be a difference between. In many ways, technology and digitization can actually foster that human connection more, because people think, oh well, we need that human touch, we need that connection, so we're going to do this, and kind of try and exclude technology from that. But as you just said, using the productivity tools, I like Telegram as well, by the way. I think it's a great, I mean, you can the channels and all that, the groups, and I mean, Telegram is great for those people who also don't want to expose their phone number too. So that's so WhatsApp and Telegram for me are great tools. But yeah, I mean, as I said, I think it definitely can lead towards more human interaction using these productivity tools. And the reach, I mean, I don't know where my business would be without social media and the reach that, I mean, I spoke about Clubhouse earlier. The amount of business leads that I work with now on a constant daily basis that stemmed from those few months on Clubhouse when everybody was on it. I mean, remember those wonderful Wake Up South Africa every morning at 8 o'clock. You were a moderator, and I used to pop up every now and again and say hello. And I mean, that was great. That's why I'm getting back onto Clubhouse, because you do get that connection. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to harp on too much about it, but I think that the technology, all the different platforms, I think everybody needs to look at the Reddits, the Discords, the Telegrams, the WhatsApps, the WeChats, everything. Just what I've learned, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, the list goes on. And I think just be on as many of those platforms as you can. And you just never know when a lead will pop up from a post you did months back. And I think for any entrepreneur, it's the tenacity that we all need to keep going. Even if a post doesn't elicit 40,000 likes within the first 5 minutes, just leave it there, give it time, because somebody may see that in a few months and come back to you. So that's advice that I would give any entrepreneur starting up. Don't expect instant results. Just keep on going, because I definitely have had that. Months later, someone coming through and generating, actual income for me. So yeah.
Absolutely.
It's great to see what you're doing as well. And to talk a bit more about, I don't know if you're still working with Algoa FM at all.
Yes. On Saturday I did my 19th show actually, but just to talk about what you were saying now, it's so true. I will get onto Algoa now, and it's so true, because sometimes we are in an environment of instant gratification, and it's very difficult even from the perspective of content marketers, because clients want to see results all the time. However, I think taking the approach of cataloging, and that's how I approach social media, particularly if a client doesn't have the budget to buy reach, looking at it as a cataloging perspective, because you might find a lot of the time I see people and followers and non-followers will save a post, but they won't like a post or anything, and then that just tells you that people take note, but not to react at that moment. And we sometimes have that expectation in marketing that, you put something out now, or even in our own businesses, you put something out now, the person's going to see it now, and they're going to react now. And there is a time divide. So I think approaching social media as cataloging, as creating evidence, right, that evidence of your product, that it lives, that it's alive, and that it's something that's legit, it's very important. And just having that mind can alleviate some stress, maybe. But of course, there are different strategies for different types of businesses. Other businesses really need to be aggressive in sales, and that's when you actually put money behind. But then again, you have to have your data straight and make sure that you're targeting all the right people. In my business personally, for me, I found that the human interaction is where I gain the most from social media, like messaging people, talking to them on LinkedIn. And I really will follow suit, Graham, and get back to Clubhouse, because on Clubhouse, you can have conversations with people all around the world in these different rooms. And truly, that is where you make a lot of progress. And I will be getting on there because, as I was saying to you earlier on, Molo Mhambi Relations has completely morphed from starting as this PR consultation, and we're now evolving into sales, which is really great, because our approach is actually to use those foundations and the knowledge from content marketing and public relations and all those principles to really, just create even more dynamic strategies when it comes to sales. So I will definitely be coming back on Clubhouse for that, because I've got my first few clients in Rwanda, which is very exciting. It's a very exciting part of South African history, right? And the African dynamic at this time. Rwanda is like our hero in Africa.
Yes. I mean, it's amazing what they went through and where they are today. It's an amazing success story. What's your main focus there? I mean, how do you help business and organizations tell their stories, grow more relevant? While I think you're also trying to focus on businesses staying authentic to their African roots. What's the main advice that you would give anybody coming to you, particularly? I'm not sure if you deal with very young entrepreneurs who are just starting out, but just basically, what's the strategy that you employ? What's the main kind of mission statement that your business would have?
Yeah, so the diamond is our little icon, and it is that for a reason. We take a 3-step approach, and we find that everything that makes a business amazing and the gems of that business are already in the business. They are in the people, they are in the culture, in the bare bones. And so we have a 3-step approach where we call it dig, polish, and display. So we will go in and we'll dig for those gems, because sometimes when you're in the business, you can't see the forest for the trees. And it just helps to have an outside person to say, hey, you've got all this amazing art up. Do you realize that that's something special? You could create amazing just tours. Thursdays, have your wine. Someone can walk through the hotel just looking at the art. You just have to label it, and someone can have a walkthrough on their own. And you can actually turn that into a revenue stream, which is something that I actually originally did at Mantis number 5 while I was there, and I'm currently doing now for a client in Rwanda. And then going in and learning about the people within the hotel, because sometimes I think in hospitality particularly, we overlook the treasures that are within the people that work in the space. And yes, they're all there to fulfill a role, but you will not believe the ideas that you could get just from having conversations and understanding. And for me, it was very interesting even going to Rwanda, because it's completely foreign to me, unlike South Africa, and learning things about the different foods and just how do you make plantain, for example, and coming in with wonder and fascination, and being able to actually, you just help them realize that this thing that you take for granted because it's just part of your everyday, it's something that I would love to learn. and then again creating an experience out of that. And then what we do when it comes to polishing that is when we then polish it into a product, into something that is something that they can sell, whether it's a revenue stream, whether it's a value add for guests that are in the hotel, whether it's an extra experience, maybe it's something that they can do in partnership with another company. Then we polish that in order to create a proper package out of it and something that is a product. And then the last part is display. As you know, you'll never sell your diamond if it's not on a window display. So the last part is displaying. And then that's when we really hone into which platforms are right. And obviously, there's a lot of work that goes behind that, right? Together with market research, understanding your market, your industries, understanding your market personas, which you typically speak about, which is who am I really speaking to? Putting a face to that person. What kind of life do they live? What kind of problems do they have? What are they challenged by? What does it take for them to succeed? And how do I fit into that as a brand, right? How does our company fit into that? If our clientele are these high flying executives and they always need to be chasing deadlines and they're meeting with clients, how can we make that easier for them? And that's really the display. And then where do we get them? Where do we speak to them? And through that process, it's obviously we do a lot of work with the team. One thing that I've come to understand is that you can put out the most amazing packages, but if the people that need to execute it on the ground don't understand it, then you might as well just leave it. So we make sure that what we're putting out there to the world, everyone that is going to be managing it, the people in whose hands the guests are going to be, they understand it very well. And then we then create the content for it. So does it need a brochure? Does it need a pamphlet? Obviously creating a WhatsApp status for it, anything, all the stories. And we make sure that it can exist on every platform where a guest would interact with the brand. So we do that part, and we have a graphic designer. I do a lot of the writing. We create all of these beautiful things. And then obviously pricing it and all of that together with the client. And that's basically what we do in a nutshell. And so now we're really taking that display part of it a little further to interface with the trade, because we have the network, we are in the industry, and it's just really one step further to making sure that our clients get the most of what we know and what we can bring to the table.
Awesome. But okay, cool. Yeah. So there's so much positivity around the industry, and I think that we've all come through so much, and we had to train our brains in the last 3 years to focus on what's going right. We we can list so many things that have come out of COVID for the better. What do you think? What would you like to see change that still needs to change in the industry to make it great going forward? Are there any things that you still, I mean, it sounds like you've you can think of a few.
I have many. Where's my scroll? But for me, Graham, I think particularly from a perspective of being a South African, and having gone through 15 years in the industry of being taught the market, where do we market, who is our client, who are we speaking to, we've never had the African in mind as an industry. And
that's come up a lot actually in the podcast that I've done, and anybody who wants to go back and listen to the others, it's make Africa travel accessible to Africans. Yeah,
make African travel accessible to Africans. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. Was it last year or in 2021? Pakamile Hlazo, Opapilane, and myself did a SATSA webinar on inclusion and what that means. I think it goes down to having culturally sensitive and conscious, I don't know how to phrase it, but making sure that the business and the people in the business are aware of their biases, particularly in a landscape like South Africa and a lot of other countries, where there are biases that are just so ingrained in who we are and the way we think and every day, and we don't realize the point at which those become external and the point at which those show up and how we show up. And when we are, as hospitality and tourism professionals, the first line, or not first line of defense, but the first, I would, the first people that interact with people from the outside, that we really should embody what it means to respect differences and diversity, and not only respect it, but to deeply appreciate it to a point where we can treat everybody in a special way, but with respect, and not not disrespect anybody based on their differences and who they are, if that makes sense. So I think it goes a long way into being in the environment of a company and truly watching for the evidence of those biases and dealing with them head on. In the companies where I've worked and been maybe one or two of people of color within the organization, it's always been evident. And it's something that I've always tried to address. And you can address it without it being a fight. It doesn't have to be a fight, because a lot of the times people aren't aware. Like, in any negative traits we have, sometimes we're doing things and we're not aware of it. And maybe we know that being a racist is wrong, and you don't think that anything that you're doing is actually disrespectful to anyone. So I think it's our collective responsibility as individuals in the industry to make sure that we're all showing up well for our industry. Because if someone has one bad experience, I mean, look at what's it called, Mati Sport, that incident that just happened now in December, and we can all get tainted with that. And while it wasn't even a hospitality professional or employee that did that, however, creating an environment, and that's the key, where we create an environment where it's possible for something like that to happen. And a lot of the time, it's not what we're doing and it's not what we're saying. It's what we're not doing and what we're not saying. If you don't go out in your business and say, we are a business that welcomes everybody and we respect the rights of the LGBTQ++ community, and you have that on your wall, someone sees that going in and they already know they need to go a temperature down with their biases and homophobic tendencies, or they can decide, actually, this is not the place for me, let me leave. And it comes back down to values, Graham, where Simon Sinek says, you look at your why, and you look at why you're in this business, and it's always connected, I think, to values. And the same goes for business. If your values, a company must have values, and those values should be aspired to by everybody within the business. And if you say, right, these are my values, these are my beliefs, and let us put that out there, the people that are attracted to that respect that have the same values, they will support your business. And those that don't. And that's just a fact of life. Even in life, nobody likes you. Not everybody has to like you. And those that are, you will do great business with them and you will be great friends with them. So yeah, that's just my perspective on that. And that's one thing that really needs to change. And another thing is there's, particularly in South Africa, there aren't enough young people in this industry. We, as Molo Mhambi Relations, we ran an expo last year called Women Explore, which was meant to be a platform where women could do more business with other women, and young people could come in and access mentors and so on. And that's still something that we're developing. And over and above that, it was also a way to gather small businesses that could be included in the SATSA ecosystem. And we're also still figuring out ways of doing that, because quite frankly, we don't have enough female business owners, and we don't have enough youth business owners. And that again comes down to leveraging what already is there naturally, what is there in our communities, what is there in our country, and also bridging gaps. Because from what I found from everybody that registered from Women Explore and the type of businesses, typically in South Africa, particularly in the Eastern Cape, you find women playing in only certain parts of the tourism industry as owners, right? You'll have ladies owning B&Bs. You'll have some as travel agents, a few, very few as owning tour operators. So there's so many other things. Oh, and yes, in crafts as well. You find a lot in crafts. And there's so many other things that they can do. And it's just about exposing them to that. And Haneli, who is the CEO of SATSA, actually came and was a speaker at Women Explore so that we could just start shedding light on exactly what else is there in the industry and what other possibilities there are. And the second thing, as I said, was leveraging indigenous knowledge to create experiences that can be revenue streams for the community, owned by the community. I always make the example of Mqombothi, and I actually wrote the editorial comment for the beer magazine in the last quarter of 2022. And I was saying, coming from the Xhosa culture, beer, commercial beer is so taboo for ladies to drink and has always been. However, the custodians of the beer making process in the home are always the women. And I would love to see more commercial Umqombothi enterprises, bottled Umqombothi, bottled Qhilika. And that's indigenous knowledge. You don't have to teach that to someone. It's not foreign to them. They can own the production, and then all that is needed is really the assistance of forming the business and getting it to market and finding the market. And, these are the type of solutions that I believe can work alongside existing tourism products such as game reserves, alongside rural communities, where the rural communities are using what they know, what they have, what they've grown up with, to create product and experiences that they own. Instead of busing a couple of ladies or gents in just to sing, there are so many more opportunities that can link the community to, hospitality and conservation, and have them have income streams that are stemmed from their indigenous knowledge, right? What has always been theirs. So
Wow.
that's there's a lot more, but that's just
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe we need to do a part 2, but definitely in a few months' time we can reconvene again. Thanks so much. Let me just see if there's any other pressing questions that I can ask that I usually ask the guests.
You asked me about Algoa.
Yes, I wanted to loop back to Algoa.
Yes.
That's right.
So I originally went to Rhodes to study journalism, and I didn't like it as a course 6 months in, so that didn't happen. But I always worked at the community radio station, and when I came back to PE originally in 2017, and I worked half day at Mantis, the other half of the day I worked at Kingfisher FM, and I've always had a fascination with radio. And so I thought, well, I've always done voiceovers at Algoa FM, and the opportunity came up for me to become a presenter. I was like, let me do it. And
Absolutely.
I'm on Saturdays from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Graveyard shift, as they call it.
Graveyard shift, but you know what? I'm a night owl. I'm up at all hours, so it's fine for me. And another reason why I got back on radio, which is also the business side, is that there isn't enough tourism representation on radio. And radio, like WhatsApp and Telegram, is such like it's in people's everyday lives. You don't have to go out of your way to listen to the radio, particularly in South Africa. You switch on the radio, you're in your car, you're cooking, it's in the background, and it's such a beautiful medium to give people access to travel, and it's not there. So behind the scenes, I'm looking at and working with the Algoa team at various solutions as to how we can get more representation of travel on radio, and
Oh, that's
hopefully,
beautiful.
yeah, hopefully we'll see something soon. I don't know, we'll see.
So I presume Algoa's got a website that listeners internationally can listen into. So for the international listeners, that's 10 p.m. South African time. So the Americans and Australians and the Europeans can listen in very, very nicely. It won't. Oh, and the South Africans who are night owls too. So what is the website address that international guests can log on to?
Yeah, it's algoafm.co.za. And there's also an app. I think it's called Radio Garden or something. I'm going to send it to you, Graham. There's an app. When you go into that app, it's like a map of the globe, and you can go to any country, any city, and see what radio is on. And you just click on that radio or that city, and the station starts playing. I'll send you that information. Maybe you can
send me the link, and I'll put it into the description of the podcast for the listeners. So, and then how do people get hold of you, the wonderful Mandisa, to work with you?
Yes, so I love LinkedIn. You might not see me posting, but if you look at my activity, I'm on liking things and talking to people all the time. So LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me. I am Mandisa Magwaxaza everywhere. I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and Molo Mhambi Relations, or at Molo Mhambi PR, MOLOMHAMBI PR. That is on all social platforms.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll put all those links up in the description. So for the listeners, it'll be in the podcast descriptions how to get hold of Mandisa for anything that you would like to get in touch with her about. Sounds like she's a busy lady and has a lot going on. So thanks, Mandisa. Let's keep this as part one. We'll do part two down the road and see how Molo Mhambi is growing. And if there's anything I can do from the international point of view to help the entities that you're working with, please reach out. I'd love to be able to assist from this side. You need to develop the product and help the businesses there, but then also it's fantastic to have those ambassadors around the world who are advocates for the product as well. So I'm more than happy to assist there if I can.
Absolutely.
And that I would say is that, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for listening, and thank you, Mandisa. It's sure to be a very, very popular podcast, and I'll send you the link, Mandisa, so you can also publicize it on your platforms as well. And I think there are some fantastic insights that you've shared. Definitely inspirational. And I think that, it's going to make a lot of people sit up and think, let's get cracking in rebuilding the industry. I also just want to add that, some people, you and I, and there's so many talks about, productivity and positivity, but there are still a lot of people who are struggling in the tourism industry and trying to recover from the business losses that they endured during COVID. And to those people, I just want to say, keep on going. You've got a lot of support. We will help you as much as we can. Reach out to anybody. Don't feel alone. I know we had the spirit of everybody being in the same boat during COVID, and that's kind of fading a bit. Don't feel left behind. If you are still struggling, reach out, and we can see what we can do to assist your business get back on track. And I just want to say that as well. I think a lot of people are wondering what's wrong with me. Why am I not recovering as fast as everybody else? My advice, and I'm sure you agree, is they shouldn't feel that way, because there are a lot of people still struggling, and a lot of us are trying to assist. And it is one big happy family, and I think we must all just help each other. I think Ubuntu is thriving in the tourism industry.
Absolutely. And I agree completely, Graham, especially in our part of the world where we have additional challenges like load shedding and just the mismanagement of our resources as a country. it is taking a lot of people a lot longer to recover. And if you contact me, you'll see on our website there's an option to get a 30-minute free consult. Sometimes it's about just talking to someone and just thinking through your rut, right? Or bouncing your thoughts off someone that's very far removed from the situation. And I'm happy to do that. I usually set aside Fridays, and I try and assist a couple of people there within my network. So I'm here if someone needs to call and just chat about just some business challenges and just see if there's a fresh perspective that might assist.
Awesome. Thanks, Mandisa. So I'll put all your contact details, and that free consult I'm sure will be beneficial to a lot of people. So thank you, and happy Monday, and happy week, happy 23, happy
Yes,
everything.
happy.
And I'll looking forward to chatting to you again, Mandisa. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Graham.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed the conversation, then please subscribe, leave us a great review, and even check out our Patreon page. Until next time, I'm Graham Watson, and thanks for listening to the Kuza Cast.